So today we're reading from the Caitanya Caritamrita, the Adi-lila chapter 12, the expansions of Advaita Acharya, we're up to text number 13. We'll go through to text number 17, which is one of Prabhupada's famous longer purports. So everyone try and stay awake. I'll try not to put you to sleep. So text number 13. Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sivila Teno Caitanya Charana Janma Sevila Tano Caitanya Charana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Janma Sevila Tenu Caitanya Charana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sevila Tenu Caitanya Charana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sevila Tenu Caitanya Charana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sevila Tenu Caitanya Charana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sevila Tenu Caitanya Charana Achyutananda Bada Shaka Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sevila Tenu Caitanya Charana. Maybe the word for word. Achyutananda. Of the name Achyutananda. Bada Shaka. A big branch. Acharya Nandana. The son of Advaita Acharya. Ajanma. From the very beginning of life. Sevila, served. Tenho, he. Caitanya Charana, the lotus feet of Lord Caitanya. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. A big branch of Advaita Acharya was Achyutananda, his son. From the beginning of his life, he engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Caitanya. Text number 14. Caitanya Gosanera Guru Keshava Bharati E Pitara Vyakya Shuni Dukkha Paila Ati. Translation. When Achyutananda heard from his father that Keshava Bharati was the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very unhappy. Text number 15. Jagad Guru Te Tumi Kara Aiche Upadesha Tomara E Upadeshi Nashta Hoilila Desha. He told his father, your instruction that Keshava Bharati is a spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will spoil the entire country. That's coming from a young 5-year-old boy as well. Text number 16. Choda Bhuvanera Guru Caitanya Gosanai Tanra Guru Anya E Kona Shastri Nai. Translation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a spiritual master of the 14 worlds, but you say that someone else is a spiritual master? This is not supported by any revealed scripture. Text number 17. Panchama Varshira Balaka Kahi Siddhantera Sara Sunuya Poila Acharya Santosha Apara. When Advaita Acharya heard the statement from his 5-year-old son, Achyutananda, he felt great satisfaction because of his conclusive judgment. So there's a long purport here, get ready for it. Commenting on verse 13 through to 17, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur gives an extensive description of the descendants of Advaita Acharya. The Caitanya Bhagavat, Anchakand, chapter 9, states that Achyutananda was the eldest son of Advaita Acharya. The Sanskrit book Advaita Charita states, quote, Advaita Acharya Prabhu had 3 sons named Achyutya, Krishna Mishra and Gopala Das, all born of the womb of his wife Sita Devi, who were devotees of Lord Caitanya. Advaita Acharya also had 3 more sons whose names were Balaram, Sarupa and Jagadish. Thus there were 6 sons of Advaita Acharya. End of quote. Among the 6 sons, 3 were strict followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and of these 3, Achyutananda was the eldest. Advaita Prabhu married in the beginning of the 15th century Shakabda, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to visit the village of Ramakali while going from Jagannath Puri to Vrindavan during the Shakabda years 1433 and 1434. Achyutananda was only 5 years old. The Caitanya Bhagavat, Anchakand, 4th chapter, describes Achyutananda at that time as Panchavarsha Vyasa Madhura Digambara, only 5 years old and standing naked. Therefore, it is to be concluded that Achyutananda was born sometime in the year 1428. Before the birth of Achyutananda, Advaita Prabhu's wife, Sita Devi, came to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at his birth. Thus, it is not impossible that she had the other 3 sons by Advaita within the 21 years between 1407 and 1428 Shakabda. In an unauthorized book of the name Sita Dvaita Charita, published in Bengali in the unauthorized newspaper Nityananda Dayana in 1792 Shakabda, it is mentioned that Achyutananda was a class friend of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. According to Caitanya Bhagavat, this statement is not at all valid. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the renounced order of sannyas, he came to the house of Advaita Prabhu in Shantipur in the year 1431 Shakabda. At that time, as stated in the Caitanya Bhagavat, Anchakand, chapter 1, Achyutananda was only 3 years old. The Caitanya Bhagavat further states that the naked child, the son of Advaita Prabhu, immediately came and fell down at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord immediately took him on his lap, although he was not very clean, having dust all over his body. Lord Chaitanya said, quote, My dear Achyuta, Advaita Acharya is my father, and thus we are brothers. End of quote. Before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his spiritual forms during his residence at Navadvip, he asked Sri Rama Pandit, Srinivas Acharya's brother, to go to Shantipur and bring back Advaita Acharya. Achyutananda joined his father at that time. It is said, Advaitera Tanaya Achyutananda Nama Parama Balaka Seho Kande Abhirama. Achyutananda also joined in crying in transcendental bliss. Again, when Lord Chaitanya beat Advaita Acharya for explaining Srimad Bhagavatam from an impersonalist viewpoint opposed to the principles of Bhakti Yoga, Achyutananda was also present. Therefore, all these incidents must have occurred only 2 or 3 years before Lord Chaitanya accepted the sannyas order. In the Caitanya Bhagavat, Anchakand, chapter 19, it is stated that Achyutananda, the son of Advaita Acharya, offered his obeisances to the Lord. Therefore, it should be concluded that from the very beginning of his life, Achyutananda was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Everyone's still awake? Good. We'll continue. There is no information that Achyutananda ever married, but he is described as the biggest branch of the Advaita Acharya family. From a book named Shaka Nirna Yamrita, it is understood that Achyutananda was a disciple of Gadadhar, and he took shelter of Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri and engaged in devotional service. The Chaitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 10 states that Achyutananda, the son of Advaita Acharya, lived in Jagannath Puri, taking shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit, in the last years of his life, also lived with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. There is no doubt, therefore, that Achyutananda was a disciple of Pandit Gadadhar. In the accounts of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dancing in front of the car during the Rath Yatra festival, Achyutananda's name is to be found many times. It is stated that in the party of Advaita Acharya from Shantipur, Achyutananda was dancing and others were singing. At that time, the boy was only 6 years old. The Gora Ganadeshtapika, compiled by Sri Kavi Kanapur, has described Achyutananda as a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit and a great and dear devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. According to the opinion of some, he was an incarnation of Kartikeya, the son of Lord Shiva, and according to others, he was formerly the Gopi Achyutya. The Gora Ganadeshtapika has supported both these opinions. Another book, Narottam Vilas, compiled by Sri Narahari Das, mentions Achyutananda's presence during the festival at Kaitari. According to Sri Narahari Das, during the last days of his life, Achyutananda stayed in his house at Shantipur. But during the presence of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he lived in Jagannath Puri with Gadadhar Pandit. Of the 6 sons of Advaita Acharya, 3, Achyutananda, Krishna Mishra and Gopala Das, lived faithfully in the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Since Achyutananda did not accept a wife, he had no issue. The second son of Advaita Acharya, Krishna Mishra, had 2 sons, Raghunath Chakravarti and Dola Govinda. The descendants of Raghunath still live in Shantipur in the neighbourhoods of Madan Gopala Pada, Gankara, Mirjapura and Kumara Kali. Dola Govinda had 3 sons, namely Chanda, Kandapa and Gopinath. The descendants of Kandapa lived in Malda in the village Jikabadi. Gopinath had 3 sons, Sri Vallabha, Pranavallabha and Keshava. The descendants of Sri Vallabha lived in the villages known as Mahishadara, Damukadiya and Chandipura. There is a genealogical table for the family of Sri Vallabha beginning from his eldest son Ganga Narayan. The descendants of Sri Vallabha's youngest son Rama Gopala still live in Damukadiya, Chandipura, Sholamari and so on. The descendants of Pranavallabha and Keshava live in Utali. The son of Pranavallabha was Ratneshvara and his son was Krishna Rama, whose youngest son was Lakshmi Narayan. His son was Navakishori and Navakishori's second son was Rama Mohana, whose eldest son was Jagabandhu and whose third son, Vera Chandra, accepted the sannyas order and established a deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Katwa. These 2 sons of Rama Mohana were known as Bada Prabhu and Chauta Prabhu, and they inaugurated the circumambulation of Navadvip Dham. One may refer to the Vaishnava Manjusha for the complete genealogical table of Advaita Prabhu in the line of Krishna Mishra. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Everyone's still awake? Yes. So it's interesting. I was reading in the Krishna book how Krishna appeared in the Yadu Vamsha, the Yadu dynasty. Of course, Krishna doesn't take part in any mundane family in the material world, but the family he chooses to appear and become very, very famous. So, as we know, the Yadu dynasty became very, very famous because Krishna chose to appear within that family dynasty. So, similarly, we can read in the Chaitanya Caritamrita that these families and their descendants become very famous and well known because the Lord in his incarnations chose to appear within these family lineages. So we're hearing about some of those family lineages today coming from Advaita Acharya and his descendants. And still, when you visit places like Jagannath Puri today, there are still descendants there from these personalities we read about in the Chaitanya Caritamrita. Remember, many years ago now, we were visiting Dandabanga in Jagannath Puri, which is just outside of Puri. We took a nice bike ride there, and it's now managed by the disciples of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and they said there was a devotee there who was a descendant, I think, from Shivananda Sain. So these family descendants are still there, even today. Even when we were in Vrindavan in 2018, when you go to a place near the original Madan Mohan temple, where one of the rasa dances take place, there's another devotee there who allegedly is a descendant from Lord Nityananda Prabhu. So these descendants are still present today. And today, obviously, we're hearing about Achyutananda, who is the eldest son of Sri Advaita Acharya. So Advaita Acharya, there's some nice images there of Advaita Acharya Prabhu. And of course, Advaita Acharya is one of the main disciples, descendants from Lord Caitanya, who was responsible for calling Lord Caitanya to appear in the material world. At that time, prior to Lord Chaitanya's appearance, there were a lot of impersonalist Mayavad philosophies spreading around Bengal and around India, and Advaita Acharya was lamenting that how can these impersonalist Mayavad philosophies be defeated unless the Lord himself comes. So he began offering tulsi leaves and Ganga Jal to his Shalagram Shila. And I believe you can still see the Shalagram Shila at Advaita Acharya's house. He had two houses, one in Shantipur and another one in Navadweep. So I think the Shalagram Shila is maybe in Shantipur. So you can still visit these places and see this Shalagram Shila that Advaita Acharya was worshipping. So because of his sincerity of his prayers and his calling to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the material world. It's explained that we know that he had external reasons for appearing and internal reasons for appearing. So the primary external reason for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descending was because of the prayers coming from Advaita Acharya. So we can see if we offer very sincere prayers in a non-mechanical way with heartfelt devotion, then we can attract Krishna's attention this way. Just like when we read in the Krishna book how Mother Bhumi had approached the Lord Brahma, lamenting that the earth was overburdened by so many demoniac personalities at the time. So Lord Brahma and the demigods approached the milk ocean at Swaitadweep and began chanting the Purusha Shukta to Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. And they were chanting, but there was no response to these prayers, the Purusha Shukta. And it's explained that Krishna Kshirodakshaya Vishnu only replied to Lord Brahma after Lord Brahma began offering more heartfelt prayers. So we may offer prayers in a mechanical way, but it doesn't mean Krishna is going to reciprocate with those prayers. We can chant many mantras and prayers and these things, but it's the consciousness and the intent behind those mantras when we chant them which will attract the Lord. And of course it's one of the items of devotional services, offering prayers. So it has to be done in the right consciousness with the right intent behind it, which is why it's a nice meditation during Kartik on the pastime of Lord Damodar to really enter into that sweet, loving, devotional mood. So it's explained how Advaita Acharya is an incarnation of Mahavishnu and Sadashiva, and his two consorts, as we heard in the purport, he had two wives, Sita and Shri. Advaita means non-dual because he's non-different from the Supreme Lord. Acharya means he's disseminating Krishna consciousness. So Mahavishnu's main function is to create the universes. He breathes out these universes, and these different globes appear from the body of Mahavishnu as he's breathing out, where these universes are manifest. Because Advaita Acharya is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he's called Advaita. He is in the Vishnu Tattva with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. These are the three masters, but Nityananda and Advaita are servants of Mahaprabhu. So even though Advaita Acharya is an expansion, a plenary expansion coming directly from Krishna, just like Lord Nityananda, he's come in the mood of being a servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's explained that like Krishna and Balaram, there's no difference between Krishna and Balaram, but Balaram also has a slightly different mood to Lord Krishna, just as Lord Nityananda Prabhu also has a mood of service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was also a disciple of Mada Madhava, who's one of the acharyas coming in our line, Madhavacharya. So that's a picture of Madhavacharya, top right-hand corner. He was a direct disciple of Madhavacharya, Advaita Acharya. And obviously he was a very intimate servant of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Many pastimes in the Caitanya Caritamrita with Advaita Acharya and Lord Caitanya when they were serving prasadam together, and all sorts of ecstatic pastimes when Advaita Acharya invited Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu to his house and Lord Nityananda Prabhu to his house and were feeding them prasadam, and Lord Nityananda began complaining how there wasn't enough prasadam for him to eat, even though there was a bountiful feast. And Lord Advaita Acharya called Nityananda a reject Paramahamsa. So there's all these loving exchanges between Advaita Acharya and Lord Nityananda and Lord Caitanya. I think it was Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur, who used to be Sankirtan partners. They would go out and do Sankirtan. I think Haridas Thakur would go out sometimes with Lord Nityananda and also sometimes with Advaita Acharya. So we can see when we do Sankirtan, it's nice to be done with in the company of Vaishnavas, just like how we see with Advaita Acharya and Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur. They'll go out in teams together and knock on doors and plead people to chant the holy names of Krishna. And I think Prabhupada was reading a statement recently in one of his purports saying that this is the purpose of the Hare Krishna movement is for devotees to go door to door to present this Krishna consciousness to all the conditioned souls. So it's not such a thing these days, is it? People knocking on doors? Not so much. I used to do it when I was a brahmachari in New Zealand. It's actually very sweet when you transcend the mind a little bit and meet people. We have some really, really nice exchanges when you're doing door to door. Like a lot of people invite you into their houses and you can go a little bit deeper with them, explain the philosophy and present the books, and you can make a nice personal connection with people when you're knocking on doors. I know a godbrother of mine down in Sydney, Radhik Prasad Prabhu, who's a very fired up book distributor. He's doing a lot of door-to-door knocking at the moment, and he's selling Srimad Bhagavatam sets, going door-to-door. During the Bhadrapanim campaign, he was very enthusiastic to distribute Bhagavatam sets. I think Australia did something like 430 sets thereabouts during the Bhadrapanim campaign. So it's quite phenomenal in Australia. I think about 400 plus Srimad Bhagavatam sets. So Radhik Prasad is one of the devotees who's being very enthusiastic and encouraging devotees to do that. So he sometimes puts photos up on this messenger group of these sets he's distributing to people. I think even on the in one of the, maybe in Parramatta in Sydney, he had a book table set up, and I think he sold a Bhagavatam set from his book table as well. So if anyone's enthusiastic, then there's lots of opportunities out there to sell Srimad Bhagavatam sets and distribute Prabhupada's books in so many different ways. So Advaita's 6 sons, we heard how he had 6 sons, 3 Achyutananda, Krishna Mishra and Gopal Mishra were considered the jewels of his sons, because the 3 other sons, Balaram, Sarup and Jagadish, did not actually take to Krishna consciousness. So it was only, even though it's a plenary expansion coming from Krishna himself, 3 of his sons didn't become devotees. So it's not easy making devotees in the material world. But 3 of his sons did become devotees, and Achyutananda was the crest jewel of those 3 sons of Advaita Acharya. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur paraphrases Krishnadas Kaviraja's explanation in his Amrita Prabha Bhashya. At first of all, Advaita Prabhu's followers were of a common opinion, but in the course of time, some unfortunately adopted different doctrines. Those who followed the opinions of Advaita himself are considered to be pure Vaishnavas. Those who, under some fateful influence, rejected his teachings and invented a new doctrine are considered useless. We have no need of knowing the names of the useless sons of Advaita Acharya, but have listed them together in order to be able to distinguish them. Just as the useful rice grain is separated from the chaff by winnowing, so have the useful sons of Advaita been separated from the useless. I think that was relating to one of the previous verses we heard in the class last week. How paddy is mixed with straw at first, and one must fan it to separate the paddy from the straw. It's like when you go to in Vrindavan still. When you go into some of the villages of Vrindavan, you can see some of the ladies beating the rice paddy to get the grain out and separate it from the chaff. So similarly here, it's giving the example that the sons of Advaita Prabhu who didn't become devotees were like the chaff. They had no substance to them. They didn't become devotees. And in Krishnadas Kaviraj's words, not mine, that they were useless. So there is no need to name those who are useless. I've mentioned them only to distinguish them from the useful devotees. So the Achyutananda was obviously not a useless devotee. The doctrines of Advaita Acharya are the essential teachings of spiritual life. Those who ignored his orders became useless, but those who took Achyutananda's opinion belonging to the group of Advaita Acharya's associates. They are great devotees who receive his mercy and easily attain the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Achyutananda, I'll go into a bit more detail about him. So as we heard that there are some differences of opinion about who he was in the Gaura Ganadishtapika. That's explained that he was Achyuta Gopi or Kartikeya, son of Lord Shiva. Others say that he was actually just a combined form of both those personalities. So obviously when we're dealing with the transcendent realm, it's a different category to the material realm. So you can get what seems impossible materially is possible spiritually. So either they were a combined form of Achyuta Gopi in Krishna's Leela and Kartikeya. The goddess Yogamaya was Advaita Acharya's wife. Having appeared as Sita, his other wife Shri was her expansion. Advaita's son Achyutananda was very dear to Sri Krishna Caitanya. He became a dear disciple of Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. Some say he was Kartikeya in his previous incarnation, while others who are knowledgeable about sacred rapture say that he was the gopi named Achyuta. Both opinions are reasonable because both identities are joined to him. Some people hold that his brother Krishna Mishra was also Kartikeya due to his similarity to him. So Achyutananda was obviously a very significant branch coming from Advaita Acharya. Saying the Sanskrit word, the Bengali word used here was what was it? Branch, significant branch. What was the actual specific word that was used? Master engineer and small engineer. Yeah, a big branch. Bada Shaka, he was a big branch, so it's very significant. And obviously in the last few chapters we've been hearing about these different branches from the Chaitanya tree, of which Advaita Acharya and his descendants were very, very significant. Move on to the next one. So there's all sorts of nice pastimes as well between Achyutananda and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After taking sannyas in Katwa, Mahaprabhu descended on Shantipur. Achyutananda was either 3 or 5 years old, as Vrindavan Das Thakur gives both ages in different places. And it's explained that just after Lord Chaitanya had accepted sannyas in Katwa, he was in a mood of ecstasy and was wanting to go to Vrindavan. He was fully absorbed in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, so he was making his way there. And then Lord Nityananda decided to play a trick on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were following the Ganga, and he told some of the young boys who were on the Ganga riverbank that if Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks which is the path to Vrindavan, tell him this is the path. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, thinking he was on his way to Vrindavan, actually ended up going to Shantipur because Lord Nityananda wanted Lord Chaitanya to associate with these devotees, especially Advaita Acharya. So when Lord Chaitanya approached the river, he saw Advaita Acharya there on a boat, and he became confused, thinking, what are you doing in Vrindavan? How did you get here? Thinking he's in Vrindavan. So Advaita Acharya explained, well, actually, technically you are in Vrindavan because the Yamuna, at this part of the Ganga, they flow together. So technically, this is the Yamuna. So technically, you are in Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided, okay, all right. So he stayed with Advaita Acharya in his house in Shantipur. And at that time, Adwaita Acharya's son was a young boy. So Adwaita's son Achyutananda, a gloriously effulgent naked child, was omniscient by the Lord's inconceivable power. Greatly fortunate, he was Adwaita's worthy heir. His entire body was covered with dust, but knowing the Lord had arrived, he came to see him, his face covered with laughter. He fell at the Lord's feet, and the Lord picked him up, dust and all, and held him on his lap. So, yeah, very, very intimate dealings with Achyutananda and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And these pastimes, a lot of them come from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. While holding him, Mahaprabhu said to Achyutananda, "Since Adwaita is my father, you are my brother." When he heard this, Achyutananda responded by displaying profound understanding of Mahaprabhu's spiritual identity by saying that the Lord was the friend of every single living being and that all scripture say that he is the father of all creation. The devotees were astonished when they heard Achyuta say this. So the wisdom of Achyutananda as a young boy. In the 4th chapter of the Anchakand, Vrindavan Dastakor writes about Achyutananda's single-minded devotion to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the following way, one day a sannyasi came to visit Adwaita Prabhu's house and asked him what the relationship between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Keshava Bharati was. Adwaita answered in a conventional way, saying that Keshava Bharati was the Lord's sannyas guru. The 5-year-old child interjected angrily, "The Lord is the spiritual master of all gurus of the world. He is the supreme Lord himself. How could anyone be his guru?" When Adwaita heard this wisdom from the mouth of his 5-year-old son, he said, "This boy is my father and I am his son." And he asked his son forgiveness for his offence, causing the boy to hang his head with embarrassment. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has also summarised the story beautifully. So we heard that in today's purport. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a spiritual master of the 14 worlds, but you say that someone else is a spiritual master? This is not supported by any revealed scripture. So Lord Adwaita Acharya is very, very happy when he heard his son speaking such profound realizations at such a young age. Mahaprabhu had appeared at Adwaita's house Mahaprabhu appeared at Adwaita's house just when the entire household was and gave his blessings to Achyutananda. Prior to this occasion, Achyutananda accompanied his father to Navadvip when he was summoned by the Lord through Sri Ram Pandit just before his great Mahaprakash Lila. He also witnessed the Lord's punishment of his father for teaching impersonalism. As in his Anubhashya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur writes the following: Sri Achyuta was the Lord's devotee from childhood. There is no information that Achyutananda ever married, but he is described as the foremost of the disciples of Adwaita Acharya. On the other hand, in Yadunandan Das's book describing the disciples of Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, Shaka Ninamrita, it is said that Achyutananda was a disciple and branch of Gadadhar. So he was a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit, which is why he spent a lot of his time in Jagannath Puri, because Gadadhar Pandit was instructed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a Kshetra Sannyas, or reside for his life in Jagannath Puri. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also it's explained that he pulled out the deity of Tota Gopinath from a sand dune, in one of the sand dunes in Jagannath Puri. So this Tota Gopinath deity was worshipped by Gadadhar Pandit, and as Gadadhar Pandit was aging, he was unable to offer garlands and do the puja nicely to Tota Gopinath. So one morning when he came to do the puja to Tota Gopinath, Tota Gopinath was sitting down in a lotus position. So you can still see this deity when you visit Jagannath Puri, this deity of Tota Gopinath. And if you go at the right time in the morning, the pujari there will allow you to have darshan of Tota Gopinath sitting down in this lotus position, because usually he has two sort of makeshift legs constructed on him. So if you go early in the morning, around sort of 5 o'clock, that time they're doing the puja, the pujari may show you, if you give a donation probably, he'll especially show you. So this very famous deity of Tota Gopinath there, and presumably Achyutananda would have also have rendered service to this Tota Gopinath form of the Lord as well. And it's also the Tota Gopinath deity that Lord Caitanya ended his earthly pastimes by disappearing into the body of this Tota Gopinath deity. And it says that there's a crack on the leg of this, a small mark on the leg of Tota Gopinath, where it said that this Lord Caitanya disappeared into this deity form of the Lord. So you can see that this particular mark on the body of Tota Gopinath as well. Who's been to Jagannath Puri here? Yeah, you've seen Tota Gopinath. You saw the mark. Yeah, because at the time I went there, they didn't show me, so I didn't see it. But you can. Is the mark quite clear? You can see. Wow, nice. Because it's quite a long way away too from the darshan area, isn't it? So it's quite noticeable, the mark on the. You can. Oh, nice. Very nice. So there were all sorts of nice pastimes with Achyutananda also in Jagannath Puri. Near the end of Mahaprabhu's life, Gadadhar remained permanently in Jagannath Puri. Achyutananda and Veda's other sons also came to stay in Puri to be near him. Achyutananda, the son of Vedacharya, lived in Jagannath Puri, taking shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Achyutananda came to Puri every year to celebrate the Rath Yatra festival, during which he danced in the 6th Kirtan group that came from Shantipur. He also participated as a dancer in the Biriya Shankirtan when the Lord danced around the temple. The kirtan around the temple started and the 7 groups began to sing. In each of the 7 groups, one devotee was a designated dancer. Advaita Acharya, Nityananda Prabhu, Prakrishra, Achyutananda, Srivas Pandit, Satyaraj Khan and Naraharidas. The Lord wandered from group to group, but all the devotees thought that he was with them alone. Achyutananda also participated in the cleaning of the Gundicha temple. When Lord Jagannath was in the Gundicha temple, Mahaprabhu would go there with the devotees to see him after his morning bath. They would go 3 times a day and perform a Sankirtan in the Gundicha temple courtyard. At the Lord's behest, either Advaita Acharya, Nityananda Prabhu, Prakrishra Pandit, Achyutananda or Haridas Thakur would dance. After bathing in the morning, the Lord would go to see Lord Jagannath, taking the devotees and dancing in Sankirtan. He would sometimes make Advaita dance, sometimes Nityananda, sometimes Haridas, and sometimes Achyutananda, sometimes Prakrishra, and sometimes other devotees. The Lord performed Sankirtan 3 times a day in the courtyard of the Gundicha temple. According to Narahari Chakrabarti's Narottam Vilas, Achyutananda remained in Puri until Mahaprabhu's disappearance. In Narahari's opinion, he spent the rest of his life living at the family home in Shantipur. He also participated in the Katuri festival. So I tried to see if there were any images of the samadhi of Achyutananda, but I couldn't seem to find anything. So presumably there is a samadhi somewhere of Achyutananda. It could possibly in Shantipur. I don't know if anyone's been to Shantipur and seen the samadhi there. But Advaita Acharya's house is still there in Shantipur, just like it is in Navadvip. So you can still visit these houses when you go on Parakram to Shantipur or to Navadvip. So that's about all the information I could find on Achyutananda. So I don't know if anybody has any other information or points they know about Achyutananda or his pastimes at all. Obviously a very intimate devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
I've got a question for you. Maybe I misunderstood you. You said something about the legs that got to go up and what were you saying?
Yeah, they've got like, when you go there, the way they dress the Lord, it looks as though he's got legs. So it's when... Yeah, he's sitting down, but they put like fake, you could say like fake sort of prosthetic legs on his form. So when he's dressed, he's sitting like this, and his skirt, bottom dress covers it, so they put legs on to make it look as though he's standing. Yeah. I've got a photo of it actually. I'll have to show you the photo, but when you go... No, I got that photo back in 2002 at least, so yeah, maybe, I'm not sure if they do it every single day, but at least the day that we were there we saw the legs, and also I've got the photograph of them as well, so I've got photographic evidence that it does exist. So I'm sure just like those different outfits we put on Radha Govindari, so there's different outfits and costumes they put, so maybe they have one where he's standing as well. But like I was saying, if you go at the right time in the morning when they're dressing, then you can see him sitting in that lotus position. Remember when I was there was an old Babaji who was also residing at the temple at the time. He's probably passed away by now, but he had a Giriraj Shila he was worshipping. So who were having darshan of him doing his puja, and he's going, yeah, non-different, Giriraj, Tota Gopinath, very nonchalantly, non-different, it's the same. You know? That was his realisation. So it's a nice temple actually. Lots of nice temples there in Jagannath Puri. I know Mother Jagatarini's had a lot of input into the Tota Gopinath deity as well. So many, lots of nice places when you were in Jagannath Puri to visit. So many famous pastime places there. Very, very nice place. So anyway, if we've got no more questions or points, yeah, Prabhu.
You said Advaita Acharya, you mentioned Madhvacharya?
Might have been to Puri, maybe a mistake. My mistake. Might have been to Puri. Yeah, might have been to Puri. Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. Correction. Thank you. Is there any other questions or points at all? No? Okay, we can stop and take prasadam. Jai Shish Chaitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.